Um, yeah, go. You want to go take your seat? Hello? Hello? Yep, just please grab your seat. Hello, everyone, again. I wanted to share with you that this is a very special moment for me and a very historical moment, I think, for Gamelab. We have the enormous pleasure and honor of having here two people that basically have some of the most amazing stories in games together. We have Shawn Layden, there is the chairman of Worldwide Studios for Sony PlayStation. Basically, that means that he overlooks and he's in charge of all the amazing game development Sony is doing in, I think, 13 studios. Is it 13 studios around the world?
13, yeah, that's
13
right.
studios around the world. So all those big God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, etc. games that you know from Sony, they are in charge of that man here. And on the other side of the ring, we have our friend Mark Cerny, that you know him very well because he was here with us a few years ago, and he's a very well-known profile. There is the guy that knows more about hardware and software and many other things in games with a tremendous career, as you know. And I want to thank you, Mark, for helping me so much, for being such a good friend and advisor behind the curtains for many years, but also this year especially for helping me bringing Shawn here.
You're very welcome.
And also Amy here. It's a great honor, and Angie and some other people. So I leave you with them. They have like a very interesting conversation. I hope you enjoy it because some of the things these two people have lived and Shawn has been through in these many years working with Sony are very surprising and amazing, and I'm sure you're going to enjoy it. So thank you very much, and please give a big applause to them to welcome to Shawn Layden and Mark Cerny.
Well, I'm very happy to be able to host this fireside chat today. I think most of you think of Shawn perhaps as the guy who gets upstage at E3, perhaps in a Crash Bandicoot t-shirt, perhaps in something else, and talks about the upcoming games.
Right.
And of course, Shawn does that in his role as chairman of the Worldwide Studios. So, as Yvonne was saying, 2,000 or 3,000 developers report to Shawn. But there's this whole other story that hasn't really been told. Shawn's been at Sony for over 30 years. He has an incredibly diverse background, perhaps the most diverse background in PlayStation. He's worked in Europe, in the States, in Japan. He's worked on the business side, the game side, network side. And so just to jump right into it, what was your first role at Sony? How did you get into the company? What year was that? That was another century, I think.
Yes, it was. It was the last century. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction, and thank you everyone here for coming out to Gamelab. This is a fantastic event. It's my first time to attend, but I know it won't be my last time. Yvonne's a great host, and the team working here are fabulous. I began my career in Sony in 1987, part of the teenage intern program. I was 8 years old, and no, but it was one of my first jobs out of college. And I joined Sony in '87 and went into their corporate headquarters directly into Tokyo because the only saleable skill I learned in college was to speak Japanese. And that allowed me to get a job in Tokyo, in Japan, working in corporate communications for Sony when the company was transforming itself from being simply a consumer electronics company, but breaking into the entertainment business. Shortly after joining, the company bought CBS Records out of New York, and then about 12 months later, the company bought Columbia Pictures to bring both bits of that entertainment software into their control, trying to create a synergistic program around creating audio and video equipment and also holding audio and video content. It was a brave move by Sony, and I think Sony remains now still the only company that really is deeply invested both in entertainment and in electronics. But I stayed there probably for, I was in the corporate gig until 1996, And in 1996, the company, I was friends with the guy who was the president of the new Sony Computer Entertainment division. And he was looking to build out his teams. And he asked me to jump over and get into the video game business. And I did tell them truthfully at the time, I said, look, I've been in corporate for the last 9 years. I don't know anything about video games, really, other than that I play them and I love them. And he said, that's okay, Sean. Nobody knows anything either. So you won't be the only guy. Because Sony was just starting out in the gaming business at that time. And been with PlayStation ever since.
So when you started, I believe you were working directly with Akio Morita, the co-founder of Sony. Is that right?
Right. After we did I did my corporate communications gig for about 3 years, and we bought, as I said, the record in the movie company. The founder of Sony, a gentleman named Akio Morita, asked me to be his secretary. And well, he has 14 secretaries, so it wasn't that special a gig. But yes, I did work for him as his speechwriter and his international aide, and spent 5 years going around the world with him, and it was a fantastic experience. But that put me in a position then to, when the video game opportunity came around, Morita-san sadly had fallen ill and was no longer the CEO of Sony, and so it's time for me to transition to something else, and PlayStation provided that opportunity.
In 96, maybe?
96, yes.
96.
Yes, that was 1996. I remember I joined in May of 96, and I'd been in PlayStation for only about 5 days, and my boss at the time came over and said to me, so Sean, are you going to E3? I said, well, should I go to E3? Yeah, you need to go to E3. I said, great, I'll take care of that, fine. I turned to one of my colleagues, of course, had to ask the question, hey, what's E3? It's this big show in Los Angeles. Okay, when is that? Next Monday. How do I order a plane ticket? So I had to find out all these things in a matter of 48 hours to get myself to E3 in 1996. And that's when my roller coaster ride through gaming began. It was crazy times back then.
Well, your challenge, if I understand it, for the first 4 years was to sell Western games in Japan.
Oh, God, it was
what could go wrong?
Yeah. Those of you who are old enough, for those of you who've read history, there was a platform called PlayStation 1. And at that time, the Japanese developers were just crushing it. Games like Tekken and Ridge Racer and Toshinden and, of course, Final Fantasy VII. I had the job in Tokyo of bringing Western games and bringing them to the Japanese market. Trying to walk up to gamers in Japan and say, forget Tekken, you want Mortal Kombat. Forget Ridge Racer, you want Destruction Derby. It was a hard slog. I say this as no offense to my European and American counterparts who actually made those games and made a fortune in those countries, but bringing it to Japan was impossible. Western games there just could not catch on. Probably the biggest selling Western game I was able to work on when I was in Japan was Formula One, because Japan is a huge Formula One fan base. But even that was only 500,000 units.
Well, that broke the rules, right? Because what everybody said was that no Western title could sell more than 200,000 units in Japan.
Most of my Western titles couldn't sell 30,000 units in Japan. So yes, you're right. Except probably the most successful Western title on PlayStation 1, and it came through our shop, and it was immediately taken away from my international software group and pulled into the standard Japanese production group. Just one title, this one little title called Crash Bandicoot. Yeah, we wanted to do that one out of my team, but this guy named Shu Yoshida snatched it off our desk and took it into the standard domestic production house. That's why even today a lot of Japanese gamers think Crash Bandicoot was made in Japan. The localization job they did on it was just incredible. Naughty Dog were fantastic developers. Of course, my colleague here, Mark Cerny, was deeply involved in the original Crash, and that's where we met.
I thought we met on Crash.
We met on Crash when you came to Japan to pick up an award.
Yes, and met Kojima at the award ceremony, in fact.
Correct.
Yes.
So all these roads come back like that. Yes. But like I said earlier to Mark, we're not old, we're vintage. All right, so let's put that in the stories here. Yeah.
I think also another challenge was QA, right? So Japanese QA, so tough, kick the game back, and some of the titles from the US and Europe simply could not be released to market.
Right, because this is, PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2, remember, these are not network-enabled platforms, so there was no patching your game. It had to be perfect and rock solid when you went to print. And of course, as all things you'd imagine, the Japanese QA is more rigorous, more intensive, more pedantic. than the rest of the world. Wasn't there that one bug like PlayStation 2 that if the disc would accidentally engage the drive, and they say the drive could come out, and if you had a cup of coffee there, it would be knocked over and you would hurt yourself.
And that was logged
That's
as
a bug. Yeah, that's a total fail. So, no, those were crazy times for PS1 and PS2.
Also, and I think you probably have the same thing that I have occasionally, which is not everybody looks at you and thinks, here's a man who can speak Japanese. So that might have, was that more of a thing when you were working in Tokyo, or more of a thing after you went to Europe, where you'd be in meetings and the Japanese would be talking freely
sure.
in front of you?
In Japan, I guess there was an expectation. I was working in a Japanese company, and then we're in Japan, so everyone speaks Japanese, and if you couldn't keep up, you couldn't keep up. But when I moved to London in 1999, we had just completed the purchase of a famous UK developer called Psygnosis. And so I transferred to London in 99 to work with the dev teams and to work with the Psygnosis teams on coming into the Sony fold, so to speak. And I was also, at that time, so I was in Europe, I did the opposite thing, trying to bring Japanese games into the European market. A lot easier, trust me, to bring European games to Japan. But those negotiations are hard, and they bring people over. And I won't name the developer or the publisher we were working with, but they were trying to negotiate a royalty deal for a game and trying to get the percentages right. And the negotiations, they go on and on. And the two gentlemen on the other side of the table whisper to each other in Japanese. The translation would be, okay, tell him 27. We'll take 25, but tell him 27. And so we finally got them down to 25. And as I walked them to the elevator, as the elevator closed, I gave them a nice Japanese thank you and for all their time and their trouble. 本当にお疲れ様です。また今度よろしくお願いします. And the guys kind of like dogs, they tickled their head like that. But you can only pull that trick once, then it became wildly known.
And then they know.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
true. Then
yeah.
you're busted.
Yeah, then you're busted.
Well, that was a great time in the 90s. All of these teams and people that are household names today were just getting into the business, like Andy and Jason at Naughty Dog. Back when Naughty Dog was, I think you met them when they were 7 people. I met them when they were 2 people.
Right.
Or
back when games only cost $1 million to make.
We were making incredibly expensive games for, under $2 million.
Right. Oh,
or your first meeting maybe with Sucker Punch when they had their little cabin in the woods.
Oh, yeah.
That first office.
Yeah, those crazy Microsoft refugees that created Sucker Punch. And they had some cabin out in the woods, and you had to drive down past like the old mill house and turn down the road with no name.
Yeah. Well, you're all hearing Microsoft. It wasn't Microsoft Games. Microsoft wasn't in the games.
They weren't in the games.
It was
right.
Microsoft Office that they were working on.
Right. They escaped
and
Excel.
They decided to escape and found a little game developer in a cabin in the woods.
Yeah. And they had this game about a thieving raccoon, which we jumped on and became part of that. And it was fabulous.
Or Insomniac, when it was just Ted Price and the Hastings Brothers.
And the Hastings Brothers, yes. And Spyro, and that's when you worked with them, right? That's when you discovered them.
On Disruptor.
On Disruptor, yes.
Disruptor, yes.
Yes, first-person shooter, pretty good.
And
now they're working on this game. So.
On that, yes, it's true.
Yes, I'm branding.
You may have heard of that.
Yeah. You will be hearing of that.
Gorilla. Now, Gorilla, when you started working with them, they were already Gorilla? Were they Lost Boys, or had they made the transition?
Were they still Lost Boys?
And they were working on a title called Kin.
It was called Kin.
Kin.
Right. And we looked at that, and very, very charismatic, the Gorilla people. I say that because one of them is here with us tonight. It was a great shop. You could see their potential, and they had a fantastic first-person shooter called Kin that we couldn't get that trademark, so it became Killzone. Yeah.
Or a couple boys in Guildford. Who had
Alex
Craft World.
Yeah.
Well, not just boys, of course. But,
So this little shop in Guildford, I guess they had either escaped Peter Molyneux's empire or something out of EA, and they had
yarn rendering.
They had a little
yarn
game called Craft World, which had yarn and foam technology, where they could render that. And we saw that. Honestly, couldn't figure out really what the demo was, but it looked awesome, and the teams were very inspirational and inspiring. And we got behind that project too, and now Media Molecule, they've turned that game into Little Big Planet, which is known and loved all around the world. And Dreams, their latest title, which they're making progress on, continues that tradition of giving tools to gamers to make their own games. It's fabulous stuff. But yeah, I've had a chance to meet all different teams. I worked with Sega closely when they gave up on the Dreamcast and moved over to PlayStation 2.
Right, well, you were the business side then.
So I was still on the development side.
But for them, you would replace their local publisher.
Yes, we became their publisher in Europe. Yeah. So that was an interesting, secret meeting we had to have that discussion and work that out before they announced it. So it's been a crazy ride. I spent the first third of my career in Japan. Then I spent 9 years in London, and then went back to Japan. I remember it was in 2007. I'd been in Europe for about 8.5 years. And when you're an expatriate working for a company like Sony, you usually get 3 to 5 years as your assignment because they don't want you to go native, right? So after 3 years, you typically say, it's going really well, but I think I need to stay a little bit longer. After 5 years, you go, yeah, I think it's going really well, and I'll call you if I need to come back. And you try to dip below the radar so no one finds you. But I remember
before you get to getting called back.
Getting called back, yeah.
Before you, Worldwide Studios was also getting started in those days.
That's right. That's right.
Difficult to believe, but we had completely independent game creation operations in 3 territories, each with their own core philosophies, management structures, goals and relationships with the publishing groups.
Sure.
And then get a tap on the shoulder around 2005, 2006. Things are changing.
Right, so we started Worldwide Studios in 2005. And that's where we took all of our 3 regional structures and tied them all up. Because by 2005, we'd been in the game business for about 10 years, and the cost of production was already escalating. Those $2 million game days were already over by 2005.
Well, those $2 million games, yeah, they were then 10, but yes.
Right, so they doubled.
They're very expensive.
Yes. And we realized that we couldn't maintain this tripartite division structure because no singular region could get enough critical mass to compete with Electronic Arts or Square Enix or Sega or any of those companies. So we created Worldwide Studios in 2005 in order to bring all of these, as Yvonne said, we now have 13 studios worldwide. And this kind of structure allows us to compete at a global level and gives you, in the end, games like Gran Turismo and God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn. So that was in 2005, and I was still in London at the time. And then 2007, right, is when I get the phone call from the CEO of SCEI. I'm standing on the train platform in Liverpool, England, and my cell phone goes off, and the woman says in there, please hold for the CEO. It's like, yeah, sure, of course, right. Who says no to that? And then there was Kaz asking me, so Sean, how are you? Oh, great, thanks. Good to hear from you, Kaz. How you doing? How long have you been in England anyway? And now, when you become CEO, you never ask a question unless you already know the answer. So when he was asking me that question, I'm sure he's got my file right in front of him. And I said, 8 years, 9 months, and about 46 days. Yeah, that's pretty accurate. It's time for you to come back to Japan. And I said, I think there's a lot of good work for me to do here in the UK and England. It's really important. No, I think it's time for you to come back to Japan. And I said, okay. But Kaz, if I come back to Japan, what am I going to do? Because he already had a head of studios in Japan, a guy at the time named Kobayashi, who I worked closely with. So I didn't know what kind of job he wanted me to do. And he said, Sean, I want you to come back to Japan and be president of SC Japan.
The business unit.
The business unit. And I'd been in game production only up until this time. And I just started laughing, standing on the train platform with the CEO on my phone. And he said, what are you laughing about? I said, Kaz, you got to tell me. What? How bad is the situation if you think bringing a game producer from London back to Japan to run domestic sales and marketing sounds like a good idea to you? And Kaz was very honest and straightforward. He said, you couldn't make it any worse. We had just launched PlayStation 3, and every territory was struggling, Japan especially so, in getting support for the platform and getting retailers to get behind it. We needed to have a bit of a shake-up in the culture at the SC Japan offices. And so in October of 2007, I sadly left jolly old England and moved back to Japan for my first job in sales and marketing in my entire life.
And the job, if I understand, is retail, right? You're selling games to retail, which means, what's the meeting? The meeting is drinks in the morning with the head of a department chain to get the latest game stocked, right? That's Japanese business.
Yeah, and then you do the journos, and then you have to sit with customer service in the afternoon, And then we worked with the third-party developers who had always been like competitors for me, but now they're partners on the platform and making sure that they support PlayStation 3. And it was going to the retailers was the really hard part. I mean, going out to meet with the president of Yodobashi Camera or Yamada Denki, and then having them beat up on me because they didn't like the PS3 business model. I learned a lot about retailing really fast in a second language. Yeah, it was crazy. But we did well. We were successful my first 18 months of sales and marketing in Japan. I would like to say it was because of my success with PS3, but actually it was because of my success with PSP. And the PSP success in Japan at that time was almost entirely based on Monster Hunter. Monster Hunter was a great game for our PSP business in Japan. Capcom remains a great partner for us. But the beauty of Monster Hunter is that in order to really complete the game, you had to do it with 3 friends. So you had to have teams of 4. So like every sale engendered 3 more sales to get your friends together to play.
It's a good model.
It was a great model, yeah. PSP was very, very good to me during my time at SCJ.
So, I mean, what was that like trying to sell? I mean, PS3 was tricky in every country for us. PS1, we'd been the sort of the spunky upstart, and then PlayStation 2 won through and getting a real tremendous brand following, and then PlayStation 3, supercomputer on a chip.
Supercomputer on a chip, yeah. There's some ways you can look at the rise, the legacy of PlayStation, and sometimes it reads like a Greek drama, right? PlayStation comes out of nowhere. It's the little kid from the forest who comes into the big city, and there's these 2 titans of Sega and Nintendo who are running everything. And PlayStation finds a way to be successful. And it finds a way to get a lot of partners onto the platform and bring out great games and really disrupt the gaming market. So then we launch into PlayStation 2, where we come in as leaders, we continue as leaders. Some other players drop out of the marketplace. Some try to get in and don't succeed, and the PlayStation 2 sales just rocket. Still the biggest selling platform of all time. And then PlayStation 3, sometimes you can go back and look at it and say, that was like our Icarus moment, right? That's when we flew too close to the sun and took a bit of a dip in the business, to say the least, during the PlayStation 3 era. Only finally, fighting it out to parity with Xbox 360 by the end of the life cycle. PlayStation 4 is a story of redemption. It's a time for us to, I think we came back, we had the right hardware specs, thank you very much, and we had good support from our partners. I think we got back to our basics about PlayStation being the people's platform and really there to provide something for our third-party partners to succeed with and reaching out to their fans. And we just try to keep an understanding and keep an appreciation of we get here with our fans at the same time. We succeed in our business with our partners at the same time.
So, how many years in Japan?
Me?
Yes.
It's hard to say because technically speaking, I still kind of live in Japan. I'm there about half of my time.
How many years running the RHQ?
Oh, running the RHQ, 3 years.
3 years. And at that point, you still, as an American, never worked in America for Sony.
I still hadn't worked in America
for Sony.
Since Reagan was president, yeah.
And then you get a call.
Right, and so there's another call, same guy, Kaz, who says to me, this is 2009, late 2009, and he goes, hey, Sean, PS3, network, PSN, we're doing a lot of stuff around that. And I said, yeah. I said, well, remember how you told me that we just need to focus on the network business to make it grow? I said, yeah, that's true. So, well, we're going to start this new company called Sony Network Entertainment. We're going to start it up in the Bay Area. We've got this guy named Tim Schaff, who's a former Apple guy, and he'll be the president of that company. We want you to go over there and be the chief operating officer. I said, yeah, when is this happening? He said, as soon as you can go. Okay, right. Well, I think the pattern you see here is that I just kind of built my career out of always saying yes when people ask me to do something. But at that time, we just moved back from London 3 years earlier, and my kids were still grieving that they had to leave all their friends in London to move back to Tokyo. And so I went home that night, talked to my wife about it.
It's just like being in the military, right?
It's like being in the military,
yeah,
except...
different base every year or two.
Yes, except it's like being in the military, except my wife's the general, not me. So, So she decided that I would go to the outpost of San Francisco, and I come back to Tokyo about 7 to 10 days every month.
So, and also though, Sony Network Entertainment, that's sort of a little bit of a step outside of games, because Sony Network Entertainment was not just games, right? That's
Right.
also movies and TV. It's a more general service that you're trying to build.
Right. I think the premise for Sony Network Entertainment at the get-go was really, at that time, every bit of Sony was kind of spinning up its own online presence, its own network service. And so we were putting the burden on the user to, okay, you go create your Sony PlayStation relationship, and go over here and create your Sony Bravia TV relationship, and go over here and create your CyberShot relationship. So we were putting the burden on the consumer to create 8, 9, 10 different relationships with Sony in order to enjoy our products and our services. So by creating Sony Network Entertainment, we wanted to capture all of that activity in one place, create a Sony Network Entertainment presence, and then channel people through that into the other bits of Sony. Well, that was the theory anyway. But in the end, by and large, that relationship was built around PlayStation. At the time, we had our own streaming video services. We still do. We also had our own streaming music service, which we don't. We got out of that one.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah. Music Unlimited. We did that for about 3 painful years. Trust me, they were really painful. Streaming music is a hard business. Ask the guys at Spotify. I think they just only manage it by just growing all the time. We decided we would partner with Spotify and bring them onto the platform. At the time, we were the exclusive console partner for Spotify and helped them grow and help bring music to our services. So we still like the PlayStation to be a place where you can realize, all of your entertainment activities. We like to think people will game 24 hours a day, but we know sometimes they watch TV or listen to music or watch a film. We just like to keep you in the world of PlayStation so you can do all of that.
And so about 3 years at
2010 to 2014.
4 years.
4 years.
And you get a call, but what's different is it's not Kaz.
It's not Kaz, it's Andy. Andy
It's
House.
Andy
Yes.
House.
Andy House. And he calls
With a pitch for you.
with a pitch
Yes.
saying, Sean, great work with the network stuff. We got a new job for you. I said, okay, what is it now? We want you to move over and be president of SCEA because Jack was stepping down. And so that's what got me on the stage at E3 in 2014 for the first time.
And then that's huge. I mean, that's a business unit that must represent what hunk of the revenue of PlayStation?
Probably in excess of 40%. Yeah. Yeah, that's a lot of money.
But you've done
That's
the
a lot of
trial
people.
run in Japan, so.
Did trial run in Japan. American retailers are just as doggedly aggressive as Japanese retailers, so same on that. Our partners in development across the platform. It was interesting, really across PlayStation 3 and PlayStation 4, that was a time when the Western development community really rose up in their quality and in their standards. And in fact, a lot of the Japanese developers, I think, had a rough start in the transition from PS2 to PS3 and even over to PS4. I mean, just the last 18 months, we're starting to see the Japanese development community really come back strong on PS4. But PS3, PS4 has been very good for American developers, Activision, EA, Take-Two, Warner Brothers. And so working with them as partners was an important part of that business as well. And that all came to an end in April.
Well, but I mean, you got the call in 2017 first, right? 2016?
2016.
2016, the call is...
Can you take on another job? And can you be the president of SCA and also be the chairman of Worldwide Studios? I did ask if that came with 2 paychecks, but the answer to that was no. So I did that for a couple of years, and now as of April, we've changed the structure a bit. We've globalized all sales and marketing under Jim Ryan, the deputy president who works out of London. And I've just now managed, since April anyway, to focus my efforts and my attentions on growing the Worldwide Studios.
So 22 years.
You did the math
At the
that
end
fast?
of which, doing the math, at the end of which, yes, chairman, Worldwide Studios.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you're, in Japan they have this thing called Stamp Rally. Do you guys know what that is? That's like you go to a theme park or you go to someplace and at every temple you get a stamp on your card and kids want to collect them all. And so I think I've won the PlayStation Stamp Rally. I think I've worked at every possible company inside PlayStation, some which don't even exist anymore.
I think Andy House was giving you a really good run for your money. before he resigned, because he'd done the Grand Tour, right? He'd done the States, he'd done Europe, he'd done Japan.
He hadn't done the network company.
He hadn't, that's true.
And he hadn't done Worldwide Studios.
I said he was giving you a run for your money.
Yeah, it was close. Yeah.
So, Worldwide Studios. So, here's a leading question. What makes the Worldwide Studios so special?
What makes them so special? I think for a lot of reasons, and you know us from our games. You may not know that, my same studio structure that brings you Gran Turismo is the one that also brings you The Last of Us, which also brings you Horizon Zero Dawn and Detroit Become Human, and soon upcoming this game, Spider-Man. So we have the 13 studios worldwide. I think one of the things that makes our structure a bit unique, and I challenge anyone to argue my claim, is that we're the only studio structure I know of that can create AAA content in 3 regions. We can make it in Japan, we can create it in Europe, we can create it in America. I think that gives us a certain energy, a certain power, certainly a widened viewpoint about markets worldwide and gamers, and I think that's a benefit to all of the studios. We have 13 studios, we have probably 2,500, 3,000 people maybe, and we have a lot of external partners that we work with, whether it be Insomniac, again I'm pushing the Spider-Man name, and Insomniac or Quantic Dream or Supermassive. So we have a lot of partners that we work with, so I think our breadth is really wide. I think the other thing that makes Worldwide Studios special is we put a lot of energy and time and dedication into storytelling. We like the big story. We like to tell the narrative. We want to make people think and laugh and cry and really get to know our characters and our worlds that we create, and hope that you want to live in those worlds for a long time and listen to the stories that the characters have to tell. For us, our entertainment medium really is about can we move you? Can we get you to have a new thought, to see a new thing? I think that's what really, if you look at all of our games at Worldwide Studios, that's probably the one thing that knits us all together.
Another dynamic we definitely have is every game for the studio is a passion project. It was great hearing Maya talk this morning about Cuphead. I mean, there's something that you want to make, and that energy and that passion really helps you make a much better game. But at the same time, all of that somehow on a business level needs to slot into, there's hardware, there's a marketing organization that is at its most efficient when there's a steady line, steady series of products going out in the marketplace. And so somehow have to have a portfolio plan and a philosophy of what it is that should be made beyond that next game that Naughty Dog is very excited about making.
Right. I think you're right, that every great game comes from someone's passion and someone's vision. You don't make a great game based on the output of an 8-member committee who you don't even know the names of those people. So at Worldwide Studios and running it globally, I thought for a long time, what kind of driving ethos could we create, or how would we decide what games we want to do? And since we're working at a global level, I had to make my message as simple as possible. And so I just tried to boil it down to 3 things.
And here are the constraints you operate under as a creative. At the Worldwide Studio.
First, best, or must. The game you're working on has to fulfill at least one of these criteria, preferably 2. First means, are you creating a first of its kind sort of game, a genre which doesn't exist, a market that hasn't been actualized yet? Will your game do that? That's kind of an obligation for us too as first party development, because we're not here to create games and steal market share from other publishers. Because we manage the platform, it's not to steal pieces of the pie, but it's to grow the entire pie. So first, when you create a new genre like Parappa the Rapper did, rhythm action gaming, who knew that was going to be a thing? Or SingStar, bringing a microphone into your living room. And soon, coming out of our studios, a game called Concrete Genie, which is a new form of entertainment that we haven't seen before. If you can fulfill that, then that's something at a Worldwide Studios level, we're interested in that project. Best is probably the easiest one to explain. If you're best, that means if you're going to make an action adventure, you better be making Uncharted or God of War. If you're making a racing game, you better be making Gran Turismo. Or golf game, everybody's golf, my favorite golf game. You must be the best in class. If someone came up with a plan that they did all the Excel spreadsheets and they, Sean, this is going to make money for us, and it's going to be the 4th best racing game ever, I've just got no interest in doing the 4th best of anything. So that wouldn't be something we'd get behind. So we have first, we have best. Must is probably the other thing that reflects to our position as first-party development attached to the platform is there are some games that we must do, even if initially the profitability might be hard to make. For example, an easy one for that is PlayStation VR games. As we're trying to grow the PlayStation VR install base, we call it, how many units are in homes, it's difficult for some third parties to look at that addressable market and get the business model to work for them. But we need games to move the platform, and it's the chicken and the egg thing. So at Worldwide Studios, we take on a number of, for example, PSVR projects in order to support the launch of that platform and getting it off the ground. So first, best, and must. We look at all of our games through that lens, and it helps us, I think, make the right decision most of the time.
No, this year, definitely some good titles.
There's where it's.
Could you please use this microphone instead?
Okay. And can I take this off? Okay, so now I have 2 microphones.
So what about risk-taking?
Yeah.
Is it possible to go out with, well, we don't say what we spend on these titles, so I won't quote a number, but
A lot.
something, yes, well in excess of $50 million. I think everybody
Well in
would agree
excess,
on that.
yes.
Is it possible to go ahead and spend that and not know the degree of market that you're going to have for that title?
It's difficult, and back in the day when games were costing $2 million or so, you could probably take 12 or 15 shots on goal to make 5. With the price of games going up 2 orders of magnitude, we're looking at probably get to take 7 shots on goal to make 5. You have to take smarter risks. You have to understand your market better. And we do a lot of research about games before we get started, not only technically, but market-wise, and have different stages throughout the production cycle where you have to decide to go or no go. Green lighting is a tricky part of the business, but sometimes red lighting is the hardest part because you hate to have to tell somebody after they put so much time and so much work in something that it just isn't working, and we have to stand that down and do something else. We do in Worldwide Studios have a lot of, I think, scope for that kind of risk-taking, and it's not sort of one strike you're out. You get a chance to try new projects too, even if the one you just worked on or had to stop working on wasn't as successful as you liked it to be. But yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
It's true. I mean, I think something like a quarter of the titles that you out there see, that isn't the game that the team started making. And sometimes, at some point in the process, somebody quietly taps them on the shoulder and says, it's done very well. It's not you have to, but maybe you should think about whether or not you really want to take this to the end.
Right. Because again, the cost of entry and the cost of continuation is so high. Sometimes you have to take a huge write-off and then move on quickly and pivot quickly to the next thing. That's true for all developers. That's not just specific to us. Everybody here, everyone who's a developer in this room knows what that's like. We're taking bigger bets, we're spending a lot more money, and it's taking more time. More time just to get to proof of technology or proof of concept. You can get hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars into the process before you can actually prove that out. So, but still games only can cost 60 euros or $60. So it's a changing business model, certainly for the game community.
So 13 studios, how different is the process depending on studio?
How much time do you have? It's quite different, but I think as we work together as a collective, I think our studios, follow the same trajectory in game development. Once we get it started and how we manage that and how we look at milestones and how we prove deliverables. But certainly in the ideation or the inception part, it's different from different studios all around. The way that we got to God of War is different than the way we got to Everybody's Golf PS4 is different from, how we got the PlayLink titles off the ground. It's an eclectic group, to say the least.
How we're getting to Dreams.
And how we're getting to Dreams, yes. We will, we're cruising we're cruising at altitude with that right now, but I don't have any plans to announce around release dates, but I think we'll hear more about that later in the year.
And on that note,
So
thank you very much for your time today. Let's have a hand for Sean.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for coming out.